Have you ever been part of a really great team? I mean, a team full of smart, dedicated people, but you just feel stuck? It's like you're all spinning your wheels and nobody can quite figure out why. Well, in this explainer, we're going to dive into what's really going on. And here's a hint. It has almost nothing to do with a lack of talent or effort.
So let's just ask it straight up. Why do good teams get stuck? It's one of the most frustrating things, right? You know everyone is trying their best. The skills are there, but progress has just ground to a halt. The problem is almost never what we think it is on the surface.
And this quote, man, it just hits the nail on the head. This whole thing isn't about lazy teams or people who don't have the right skills. It's a phenomenon that happens to people who genuinely care about what they do, but they feel like they're caught in some kind of invisible web, totally misaligned and stretched thin, especially when the world is changing all around them.
To really get this, we have to look way deeper than just, team processes or who's on the org chart. See, there's an invisible system running in the background of every single team. You can think of it like a collective operating system that's silently shaping all of your team's behaviors and decisions. And most of the time, nobody even realizes it's there.
This is where this idea of narrative systems engineering comes into play. Sounds a bit complicated, but let's break it down. Narrative. That's all about the stories we tell ourselves to make sense of who we are. Systems, well, that just means these stories form patterns and loops that drive how we act. And the engineering part? That's the game changer. It means we can actually work with these systems on purpose, like an engineer, to create real meaningful change. It's about being deliberate instead of just crossing your fingers and hoping things get better.
So here's the fundamental shift in thinking you have to make. When a team is stuck, it is not because people aren't trying hard enough. It's because the collective story they're operating from, that invisible operating system, it just doesn't fit their reality anymore. They're basically running old, outdated software in a brand new world. Okay, so how does this invisible system actually work? What makes it tick? Well, it's built on a surprisingly simple but incredibly powerful feedback loop that's constantly reinforcing itself. Let's take a look at the pieces. This whole invisible system is built on this continuous loop. It kicks off with identity, which then creates a story. That story gets reinforced by a sense of belonging, and that feeling of belonging circles right back and strengthens the original identity. It's this self-perpetuating cycle that just runs on autopilot. Let's unpack that a little bit more. First, you've got identity. This is who we believe we are. Maybe it's, we are the innovators, or we are the company that never ever fails. Then the story comes along to justify it. This is why we always push the boundaries. And finally, you get belonging. That's all the social feedback, the praise, the promotions, that feeling of acceptance that tells you, yep, you're doing it right. You're living the story. And that feedback loop just keeps going and going, making that identity stronger and stronger.
And the end result of all this is that, after running for so long, this system just becomes, well, reality. It's like the air you breathe. You stop consciously choosing to believe the story, you just inhabit it. It feels completely natural, which is exactly why it's so hard to see when it's the very thing holding you back.
So, if this system is totally invisible, how in the world do you get outside of it to make a change? Well, the key is this really powerful metaphor that helps us see it clearly. We need to understand the difference between the map and the territory. So on one side, you have the map. That's your team's story, right? It's your beliefs about how the world is supposed to work. It's your plan. But then, on the other side, you've got the territory, and that's just reality, what's actually happening day to day in your lived experience. For a while, the map and the territory, they line up perfectly. But eventually, the world changes. The territory shifts. And this is the light bulb moment. This is where the potential for real change actually begins. It's that feeling when you look down at your old, trusted map, and then you look up at the world around you, and you realize with a jolt, they don't match anymore. The path you're on, it isn't even on the map.
That mismatch, that gap between your story and your reality, that's what we call the crack in the system. Trying to force change by attacking someone's identity or telling them their story is just wrong. It almost never works. It just makes people get defensive. But if you can help people see that crack for themselves, that's where change starts to happen all on its own. So, recognizing that crack is the first step. But what do you do with it? How do you turn that realization into actual forward momentum? Turns out, there's a simple 4-step framework that can guide you right through that process. This structure is so useful for navigating change. First, you just establish the context. What's happening around us that's making us feel stuck? Then you define the problem, but, and this is key, without blame. It's not about pointing fingers, it's about saying, hey, what's this friction we're all feeling? Step 3 is the magic, the reframe. This is where you bring in the map versus territory idea and suggest that maybe, just maybe, our old map is outdated. And finally, you explore the outcome. Now that we see it this way, what becomes possible? What can we do now?
And 8, to make it even easier to remember, you can boil it all down to just 4 words. Situation, where are we? Strain, what's not working? Shift, how can we see this differently? And finally, movement, what changes as a result? It's a really clean, logical path from being stuck to getting unstuck.
And you know what's so cool about this framework? It actually calms our brains down. When we feel overwhelmed and stuck, our brain tries to solve everything all at once. But this structure gives you permission to just focus on the step you're on. It basically tells your nervous system, it's okay. We just need to understand the strain right now. We don't need the solution just yet.
So if you take only one thing away from all of this, let it be this one question. Whenever you or your team feels stuck or confused or frustrated, just pause for a second and ask, what's the mismatch here? What is the gap between the story we're telling ourselves and the reality we're actually experiencing? That single question can bring so much clarity back, and it might just be the key that unlocks absolutely everything.